Okay. All right. And we are live, 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 live. All right. So, I was on YouTube, but I don't like people coming into my lives not saying good morning or good rising and like just lurking. Like, I just feel like that's so rude. So, I ended the live. It's a new day. Like, it's a new day. And I'm just not putting up with that stuff. Like, this is not, it's totally fun for me. Let's see, Women's History Tarot. It's totally fun for me, but this is also like my job. And it's also like an actual service. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be disrespected. Like, put some respect on my name and my talent. I don't ask for much out this bitch. But the least people could do when they come into my room is to wish me good morning. Hey Leah, how are you? I was doing a YouTube live of these, but I just got tired of people coming into the lives, and when I say good morning, I'm like, hey, good morning. Let me know who's in the room. Please, come into the chat. And they're just like, they're lurking and not responding, so I just ended the live. Because I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, this is an actual service. And I love doing it. And I love the interaction. And thank you. I got my glasses from a place called Vogue Me. And yeah. So I'm very excited because I got the Six of Swords today. And so the Six of Swords is our Women's History card of the day. And it's Marsha P Johnson, who is a phenomenal transgender activist. And here's the thing. I got the Six of Swords this morning for my personal reading. So I'm like, yeah, like we're sailing away from things that don't bring us joyful, like that don't bring us joy. Like, that's what we're doing. It's a new day. All right. So, Marsha P Johnson. So in the upright, it's about a departure. It's a rite of passage, which is interesting. I never thought of the Six of Swords as a rite of passage before. And it's about self-protection. So, born to and I was very curious about Marsha's, once I started reading about her, I was curious about her birth chart. And so come to find out, she's a Virgo. So I thought that was super, super interesting that Marsha P. Johnson was a Virgo. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good rising, everyone. When you come into the room, please let me know who you are. Wish me a good rising as I wished you a good rising. We are starting a new precedent. We are starting with the Six of Swords, okay? All right. Born to a working-class family in New Jersey and raised there, Marsha P. Johnson left for New York City after she graduated from high school in 1963. Arriving with only a bag of clothes and $15, Black Marsha, as she was called in those early days, made herself a local celebrity with her eye-catching drag queen ensembles that she created on a shoestring budget. She frequently wore long, flowing robes, shiny dresses, red plastic heels, and brightly colored wigs. Marsha would find flowers to put in her hair by gleaning the leftover blooms on the street of the Manhattan Flower District. So I used to work for an organization called the Joyful Heart Foundation, and we put on retreats for healers. We would do big Heal the Healer retreats in Manhattan and also in Detroit. Actually, we went to Detroit too. And so, but when we were in the city and doing the retreats in the city, I would have to go to the flower district and buy flowers. And that was when I first moved to New York, and I had never been to the flower district before. It's absolutely stunning. This is the R Tarot. It's a woman's history tarot deck. And so I bought it because I there's lots of people in here that I never heard of. And so I got it on the first day of Women's History Month. So I've been reading a card a day. So if you want to see the other people that I read, I started reading this last Tuesday on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see the women so far, they're over there. But I think that I'm going to just do them here more. I'm going to do them here and then I'm going to upload them to YouTube. All right. So back to Marsha. So Marsha would pick up flowers from the flower district and put them in her hair in Manhattan. So after a few years in the city, she adopted the name Marsha P Johnson. So she got her last name from the Howard Johnson restaurants across. So I think that's so hilarious. Howard Johnson was huge here in the U.S. I mean, in the U.S. on the East Coast. I don't know about the Southwest and the West Coast because by the time I moved there, Howard Johnson's was kind of like out. But it was big here when I was growing up. So I think it's hilarious that she took the last name Johnson from Howard Johnson. And so the middle name represented her go-to answer. So whenever people would ask her if she was a man or a woman, she would tell them, pay it no mind. Like, you don't have to worry about whether I'm a man or a woman, honey. So though Marsha's death came too early in her lifetime, so some say she was murdered. I believe she was murdered. She was killed. She was found floating in the East River after a pride parade. So she brought her lively firecracker energy to the LGBTQ activist movement in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Following the example of the activist organization STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, many shelters for transgender youth have been established in countries around the world. Marsha's presence, so Marsha and her partner, not her love partner, but her partner in co-conspiratorship, Sylvia Rodriguez, are responsible for a lot of the LGBTQ rights that we have in this country now, because her and Marsha and Sylvia started an organization for LGBTQ youth. So her presence and legacy as a Black transgender activist was and is crucial in representing those who are most overlooked. Gender professor Susan Stryker, in a 2018 article for the New York Times, explains that Johnson could be perceived as the most marginalized of people: Black, queer, gender nonconforming, and poor. You might expect a person in such a position to be fragile, brutalized, beat down. Instead, Marsha had a joie de vivre, ow, cat, stop, a capacity to find joy in the world of suffering. She channeled it into political action and did it with a kind of fierceness, grace, and whimsy, with a loopy, absurdist reaction to it all. So I love that because, again, the Six of Swords is about moving away from things that don't serve you, moving away from things that hold you back. And I love that Marsha approached things with such joy. This is the bigger picture in the book. I love that she approached her life with such joy and whimsy, and I love that they say an absurdist reaction to it all, because shit is absurd out here in these streets. In the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn, a popular gay bar in Greenwich Village. Now, this was Marsha's birthday. Marsha was having a birthday party there. I don't know if it's going to say that here. Yeah. So police often, I don't know if you all know this, but police used to often break into gay bars and things like that, harass people, take them to jail, all kinds of stuff. This was commonplace. Okay, so in this case, though, the raided Stonewall marked the beginning of five days of riots and protests. The police were outnumbered as club goers who were forced to leave, save for those who had been arrested, formed a crowd outside. As the conflict escalated, the crowd shattered the Stonewall's window and beat down the doors to get back inside. Marsha, who had arrived on the scene, okay, so this is not true. Okay, Marsha, who arrived at the scene of the riot around 2 a.m., is credited by researcher David Carter in his book Stonewall as being part of the vanguard of people who resisted the police. So the story is that she actually started it. She threw the first glass that actually started the riot. So I'm going to finish reading and see if this lady credits Marsha P Johnson with beginning the Stonewall riot, because she is credited with that. So we're going to give Marsha her flowers, okay? A common theme links those who resisted first and fought the hardest and that is gender transgression. We know from NYPD Officer Pine's testimony that the first significant resistance that he encountered in the bar came from transvestites. Marsha Johnson and Zazu Nova were both transvestites, and the street youth were, generally speaking, effeminate men. All available evidence leads us to conclude that the Stonewall riots were instigated and led by the most despised and marginal elements of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. Exactly. So one of the reasons why I know a lot about Marsha P Johnson and Sylvia Rivera is because when I do my racial justice trainings, when I do my Her Story of the Gender-Based Movement trainings, I highlight Marsha P Johnson and I highlight Sylvia Rivera's. So that's why I know a lot of things about Marsha P Johnson. So let's see. And I've watched a lot of documentaries on her as well. On the second night of the riots, witnesses reported seeing Marsha climb a telephone pole and throw bricks onto police cars' windshields. The riots and street protests at the Stonewall Inn galvanized the LGBTQ movement in the United States. The Gay Liberation Front, an activist organization, formed in the weeks after. The GLF modeled its mission based on those of the women's liberation and Black Power movement before, linking freedom and civil rights for the queer community to a wider vision of revolutionary change, in which oppressive hierarchies of class, race, sexuality, and gender would be dismantled. So, for side note, which day do you do live card pulls for your fans? I want to get in on it. I never do that on here. I do it on Clubhouse on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Are you on Clubhouse? And I can pull a card for you after I get done with this, because I just got a new deck, so I'm itching to use it. So Marsha joined the GLF the next summer in 1970. The first Pride Parade took place on Christopher Street with participants marching by the Stonewall Inn. Marsha and her friend, Marsha and her friend and fellow drag queen Sylvia Rivera, but let's add activist to that, okay, because she was huge, took part in the landmark event. In collaboration with Sylvia, Marsha started the activist organization STAR, yes, which provided the shelter and essential resources to homeless LGBTQ youth. Excellent. Both Marsha and Sylvia supported the organization with profits they earned as sex workers. Wow. So when I started in the gender-based violence movement, my executive director started a shelter in her community where she lived. She was a waitress. This is how hardcore my old boss was. She was a waitress, and her and the other waitresses, they pulled their tips and they opened a domestic violence shelter. So now we find out, which I did not know, that Marsha took the money she earned as a sex worker and started her shelter for LGBTQ youth. Wow. Marsha continued to perform in drag through the 1970s. She was a member of Hot Peaches. Oh, I like that. Hot Peaches. A political and comedic drag performance troupe that started in 1972 and continued putting on productions until 1990. She was noticed by artist Andy Warhol, who photographed her for a series of screen prints titled Ladies and Gentlemen. Yet life was never easy for Johnson, as journalist Sewell Chan writes in the New York Times. She had the first in what she said was a series of breakdowns in 1970. Oh, that's right. And was in and out of psychiatric institutions after that. I may be crazy, but that don't make me wrong, she often said. I love that. I have a line like that in a play. Interesting. Sometimes after being arrested, she would be sent to a psychiatric facility, be put on prescribed medication, and then after a number of weeks or months was released without any kind of support system in place. So she also was shunned by the mainstream, mostly white men, gay men, also like the mainstream, because her and Sylvia really were put on the outs of the mainstream gay movement because they were so outlandish, and because they both had, Sylvia was severely drug addicted. As we said here, Marsha had mental illness. So they both were outside even the movements that, where they could have found the most support. Marsha was found dead in the Hudson River. Oh, I thought it was the East River. My bad. In July 1992. Given her generally upbeat disposition and an ominous wound on the back of her head, Those who knew her were shocked when the police quickly announced the cause of death was suicide rather than conducting a homicide investigation, which definitely was not uncommon then. It is not uncommon now. Activists point to the police's disregard for Marsha as evidence of a systemic prejudice against queer people and people of color. Marsha P Johnson served her community the best she could by being herself during every step of her journey. In moving to New York City, she found like-minded people who would be her comrades in activism and friends who would appreciate her uniqueness. By going to the Stonewall Inn on June 20th, 1969, she directly resisted the police. Marsha walked down the city streets and used what resources she had to help people in need. The Six of Swords is an invitation to change or move into a new phase of life. This card's presence in your reading indicates that you may be carrying painful memories or mental baggage. The Six of Swords suggests that you try to move on, to forge ahead however you can, wherever you can. What recent events in your life have caused big shifts and changes that are making you feel emotionally overwhelmed? How can you better embrace opportunities to move forward, and what obstacles must you surmount to do so? Great. That's what I also like about this book, is they give you questions, and I always like homework. So that is our Marsha P Johnson shout out for the day. Amazing. So let's just do a quick read for you, Leah, from my Light Seers Tarot, and then I need to get on with my day because I have a keynote presentation on Friday, and they want it pre-recorded. They don't want it live, so I've got to finish that recording today. You know what, this actually, I couldn't tell if that was upright. What do we have for Leah Spirit? What do we have? Thank you. So we have the Two of Swords, obviously quite different than the traditional imagery, but you get the vibe, right? I feel like this goes along with the Six of Swords, in that we know that the Two of Swords, she's not really bound. Swords has to do with ideas. And so you see here, she's at a crossroads. I just got this deck last night, and I love the imagery of this deck. So you're actually the first person I've read for with this deck. I love the imagery here. She's at a crossroads, but her hands are not bound. She can totally, look, she's got her hands in her hair and not taking off this blindfold. So what this makes me feel like is, obviously the answer that you're seeking is at hand. That's what that's making me feel like. The balance that you're working towards, I feel like this is an image of the traditional Two of Swords. And it's like voices squawking in your head. But the voices squawking in your head, like with the Six of Swords, they're just old. They're just old tapes. They're old baggage. They're not real. And so in order for you to pick which direction to go in, all you have to do is take the blindfold off. So that is your reading. Oh, really? I know, this deck kept appearing to me too, but I never looked at it in depth. And I was looking at another tarot reader the other night, and I said, let me just look into this Light Seer Tarot. And I really, really like this deck. So that is your message for the day. Yeah, so that's what I have for you. And again, if you want to check out my other videos, of course, go to the Magic Hours, and I'm going to download this and I'll post it to my YouTube channel. And as always, if nobody's told you yet today, you are loved, you deserve love, and love is on the way. Thank you. Bye, Leah.